I'd now like to introduce our second speaker, who I have to say is at least looks the coolest. Mr. Bobsy Gaia was born in Beirut. He is a long-term Hong Kong resident who has been pioneering healthy and sustainable communities since 1992 by creating ecologically viable lifestyles through various mediums and expressions, including popular destination organic vegetarian eateries. Interestingly, Bobsy and Friends of the Earth have a long history. He had actually designed the Trees for Life, our actually promotional event for Trees for Life, which was just so phenomenally successful at its time. Today, as an eco-entrepreneur, he has sought to build healthy and sustainable communities through ecologically viable food and has founded or co-founded many of the vegetarian eateries that have become standard bearers of health movement in Hong Kong. Bookworm Cafe, Life Cafe, Mana Fast Slow Food. Since the 90s, Bobsy has been championing the ongoing planting the Llama Forest and through Able Charity, which he co-founded in 1994. Efforts to protect and expand the forest continue today. In 2009, his Save the Human, Don't Eat the Planet campaign won the Best Documentary Award at iShot Hong Kong Film Awards. Currently, Bobsy is working on creating a Babylon, the gathering of a tribe, an inspiring cafe, lounge, and community in the heart of the downtown Central. Bobsy, I would now like to invite you on stage and share with us the immeasurable amount of knowledge and experience you have in this subject. Welcome.
Right, this was said quite a while ago and it's become pretty famous in the vegetarian green movement. If slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be a vegetarian. Well, I would like to modify that quote for 2015 and say, if industrial animal farms had glass walls, everyone would become a vegan. And this is the fundamental difference today. It's not just meat and fish, but it's meat, fish, and especially dairy. So really, it's the industrial animal farming that is the scourge and the disgrace of humanity today. Not slaughterhouses, because slaughterhouses, as David said, is where the animals get killed. But oh my God, the suffering that these poor animals go through, and the suffering that humanity has to go through. We're living in a world short of water, yet 50% of China's water doesn't go to human beings. 50% of China's fresh water goes to industrial animal farms, the pigs, the cows, the chickens, etc., etc. Scratch the surface, ladies and gentlemen, and you will see the truth. And the truth is staring us right at the face. And as David said, the United Nations put out a study called The Long Shadow of Livestock in 2006, and that was alarming. They alerted us that transportation only amounted to roughly about 13% of greenhouse gases, while the consumption of meat, fish, and dairy amounted to about 18%. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, it's much bigger. This was a study in 2006. The consumption of meat, fish, and dairy amounts to close to 30% of all the world's pollution. But anyway, I'm here to talk about the growth of the movement in Hong Kong since I've been here in 1992. And I would like to send a thank you to Friends of the Earth, because when I first rocked up in Hong Kong in 1992, I was penniless. I didn't have any money. The idea of paying 2 months' rent and 1 month's deposit to get an apartment was Everest to me, and I had no climbing material. So the concept of getting an apartment for me was unbelievable. So I had no money. What could I do? Straight to Friends of the Earth and WWF, but Friends of the Earth welcomed me. The beautiful Mei Ng, who's not here today, welcomed me with open arms, and I said, what can I do? I'm a graphic designer, my background is fashion, how can I help? And, you know, hit it off straight away, Mei Ng and myself, and I said, great, let's design something, Trees for Life. We started a campaign called Trees for Life. We designed the posters, the flyers, the leaflets, the t-shirts, the logos, and of course they had me tree planting. Now, I'd never planted a cabbage in my life, let alone plant a tree. So I became a tree planter, and it really touched me in the core of my heart. Like, Bobsy, go and lead 50 people how to plant trees. I'm like, what? So, okay, off we go, we plant trees. It was beautiful. We were mostly planting in Lantau back then. And then, eventually, I co-founded Able Charity, and in 1997, we started to plant the Llama Forest, and we had a vision: if we planted in the same spot year after year, lo and behold, something might happen. Previously, we'd planted in Quarry Bay Country Park, in Lantau Country Park, here, there, and everywhere, on Llama Island. But the vision was consistency. If you plant trees in the same spot, year after year, lo and behold, a miracle might happen. God is great, a forest. And now we have a thriving forest of over 30,000 trees. And the beautiful thing is, nobody knows about it. There are no government signs, no railings, no do-nots, no concrete, just Mother Nature. And excuse me for being so arrogant, but there's also no rubbish on the path. There's no plastic bottles. If I see a cigarette butt, I pick it up because, wow, there's a cigarette butt. And it's one of Llama Island's best kept secrets, if not Hong Kong, and now it's out. Please go to the Llama Forest. There are beautiful trails, lovely birds, wild boars. Back to here. No, I didn't press that. Oh, you're pressing it. So this is useless?
So make it easier, you have them.
Yeah, I'll just go down there. Well, so much has happened since I first rocked up in Hong Kong. In 92, 93, 94, well, let me start a bit earlier. The reason I became vegetarian in 1992, there I was, 92, 93, planting trees with Friends of the Earth, and realizing that in my heart I'm an ecologist, in my lifestyle I'm an environmentalist, but I still ate fish. And I realized the true cost of a hamburger is not 20 Hong Kong dollars. The true cost of a hamburger, if you can account the proper accounting, including all the externalities, is closer to 200 Hong Kong dollars. And I said, whoa, how can I call myself an environmentalist when I'm still eating fish and meat and dairy? So I became vegetarian overnight in the environmental reasons, for deep ecological reasons, because I realized the amount of water, the amount of trees, the amount of natural resources that are going into producing 1 pound of beef is staggering, and I'll share some of the facts with you a bit later. So that was my journey, and then later on, and like David, I discovered the health reasons, and like Lakshmi, I discovered the health reasons, the spiritual reasons, the compassion reasons, and I haven't even mentioned the poor animals yet. So I came from a different angle. And today we know that this is the most pressing and most urgent task, challenge facing humanity today. It's not a bunch of extremists running around in the desert. It's not the GDP. It's not what's happening to China's economy. It's not what's happening to the American economy. It's not about endless growth. The story today, the narrative today that really matters is how are we, as consumers, contributing towards the well-being, health, not only of the planet, but of humanity too. This is a central question. As consumers who consume every day, what is our impact on the next generation, on the future? It's massive. And as David was saying, the consumption of meat, fish, and dairy is the biggest, by far, threat to humanity, our economy, and the well-being of our children. It's almost like comparing Ma On Shan to Mount Everest. It's staggering. And even as I speak now, saying 30% of the world's misery and pollution and suffering is coming from the consumption of meat, fish and dairy, it may well be 35 by now. Studies are always late when they come out. So when I first came to Hong Kong, there were vegetarian restaurants, but they were either Buddhist or Indian. And that was fine, but neither of those types of cuisine tended to be healthy back then, as you all know. Times have changed, of course, but I'm going back to the early 90s here. So there was always a demand to cook at home, to go shopping. Now, I don't know if anybody remembers. Who remembers a small vegetarian restaurant in the back lane there, called Vege Table? Anyone remember Vege Table? Well, they're one of the pioneers. Anybody remember the Source of Health? It's on Dagila Street. It's one of the most expensive properties in Hong Kong. The Source of Health was around, I think in 95, 96. And that was a one-stop vegetarian place where they had wonderful foods. So the Bookworm Cafe was not Hong Kong's first vegetarian restaurant, as many people say. We opened the Bookworm Cafe in 1997 out of sheer desperation. A whole bunch of us, all hippies, living on llama, running around barefoot, desperately wanting to eat healthy food. It didn't have to be vegetarian, but we all happened to be vegetarian. So we opened the Bookworm Cafe out of sheer desperation and instant success. Boom. Weekends were packed, but Vegetarian Cafe was Hong Kong's first bohemian, organic, vegetarian community. We had a lot of events. A lot of today's wellness pioneers and speakers and doctors and practitioners cut their teeth in Bookworm Cafe by presenting arguably one of their first talks to the Hong Kong community, whether it was kinesiology or Steiner education or Montessori education or whatever it was. Anything that benefited humanity and the planet was welcomed in the Bookworm Cafe. And so on and so forth. So yes, there's a massive evolution. I mean, I can only speak for this in Hong Kong, from 92 to 2005. Now, I've been an active public speaker for many years now, and I especially speak at schools and universities. I love speaking to the young ones. When I'm speaking to a class of 7-year young people, I ask a question, all the hands go up. No one knows the answer, but they put their hands up, because kids are wonderful. When I'm speaking to 13, 14-year-old kids, I ask a question, no hands go up, everyone does this, the body language changes. Nevertheless, it's fascinating. And then speaking to university students and gatherings like this. What I've noticed is the pink elephant who's always in the room. Now, I used to speak a lot with the Environmental Protection Department back in the 90s when we were actively planting trees and this and that. I'd go to all these events, and there wouldn't be any vegetarian food at these events. I'm like, how can that be? This is having the biggest impact on the planet. And we're going to an environmental protection event or green event, yet there's no vegetarian food on the menu. And this used to really, really hurt me. So in public talks like this, whether it's at the Zero Waste Summit a few months ago, or etc., seldom do we notice the pink elephant in the room. She's sitting over there and there and there, but nobody can see her. Seldom is this topic spoken about, that the consumption of our diets is radically altering humanity and the planet, irrevocably. Yet we talk about conserving this and reducing that, which are wonderful things. We talk about saving the panda and saving the elephants and saving the rhinos and saving the whales and saving the planet, which is a noble thing to do, and we must save all of those. But we also have to save the human. And we do that by not eating the planet. We are literally devouring the planet. We are behaving more like termites than conscious Homo sapiens. So I always refer to the pink elephant, and nobody wants to talk about it. But today, the two wonderful speakers before me have mentioned the pink elephant in the room. So we can change the world, yes, and we can change the world today by shifting our diets and reducing our consumption of meat, fish and dairy. Reduce it. If not for your children's sake, for your sake. If not for your sake, for the planet's sake. Ooh, the numbers are scary. The amount of water wasted or used to create one hamburger, 1/4 pounder burger that you all know, you know where you buy it from, is the equivalent of showering for 2 months non-stop. Imagine your showers running for 2 months non-stop. That's how much water goes in to create one hamburger. How many hamburgers do we eat in Hong Kong every day? You know, don't even want to think about it. I'll move through this very quickly. All these figures, as David said, you scratch the surface on the internet and there it is. A tomato compared to a hamburger, 660 gallons compared to 3 gallons. Now, one of the main reasons the consumption of meat, fish and dairy is having the biggest impact is the sheer population of these poor, industrially farmed animals. And to be very clear, we're not talking about the animals in the wild. We're not talking about organically farmed cows. We're talking about animals that are raised in factories. If you put the population of the livestock, the industrial animal livestock, from the earth to the moon, they'll go back and forth 50 times. That's how many pigs, cows and chickens there are. While the human population would barely make it 4 to 5 times. So it's the sheer number of animals that need to be fed and watered every day. And sadly, cows in the industrial animal farms are eating better than at least 1 billion humans. The population of humanity today is 7.2, 7.3 billion. Let's say 7 billion. Okay. Let's say there's 7 billion humans today. There are 100 billion industrially farmed animals. Staggering. So out of the 7 billion, 2 billion of us are struggling to eat well and drink well. 1 billion of us are really, really struggling. We can barely eat, we can barely drink. Yet somehow humanity, in all its wisdom, manages to feed 100 billion farmed animals. How can we do that when 2 billion brothers and sisters are suffering? This is the game changer, ladies and gentlemen. We have to understand where our food comes. What is the source of our food? How is it coming to our tables? Once we start asking these questions that are very dangerous questions, because trust me, everything changes after that. Once the light comes in, it can't go out again. Once your mind expands with a new idea, a new thought, a new truth, your mind does not shrink again. This is the beauty of the human mind. The facts go on. 90% of the Amazon is being wiped out so cows can eat soya bean, and so we can grow soya beans and oats and grains to feed cattle, not to feed humans. That's staggering. 91% of the lungs of the earth. We cannot live without the Amazon. Yet we allow this to happen every day. It's not fair. Global greenhouse emissions, David, my sources show that transportation of 13%, while cattle is over 50% already. So, we need food as justice and justice as food. I think this quote speaks for itself. It is time to change the narrative, move away from just planting trees, switching off electricity, taking public transport, eating veggie 1 day a week. We have to change the narrative and see the justice in our food, and see food as justice. The population, there you go, it's mind-bogglingly staggering. Again, amount of water, this is outrageous. The amount of intelligent beings, whales, dolphins, seals, these are intelligent beings. We can't compare to them humans because they have no need to do what we do. But these are sentient beings that have high levels of consciousness. And these are not the animals that are farmed. This is the bycatch. When we're fishing, we're no longer fishing the romantic way with the fishermen throwing the nets. We're fishing with trawlers the size of this building that take everything from the sea, the good, the bad, the ugly. And as a result, almost 1 billion of these intelligent beings are wasted by the fishing industry. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's so simple, but sometimes the truth is so simple. Sometimes we are so close to the drama that we don't see it. We're so close to the stage that we can't see it. This is the clarion call of our times. A diet change, not climate change. Now, let me just pause a little bit and tell you that I am not suffering by becoming vegan. I'm vegan. I eat very, very little organic cheese or organic yogurt on special occasions. I am not suffering. It's not poor Bobsy like it was poor David. I am thriving. I get to hang out with the hottest women in Hong Kong, the models, the movie stars, the actresses, the coolest people, the cultural creatives, the people who create our culture, the hipsters, the funksters, the game changers. I get to hang out with all these people. They come to our restaurants and have been since 1997. So we vegans in the world, we are not suffering, we are not sacrificing. Although the word sacrifice means to move towards the sacred. Sacrifice means you move towards the sacred. When you sacrifice, you give of yourself, but you receive the ancient teachings of all the sifus and sages. The more you give, the more you receive. And in your time of need, in your time of desperation, this is when you must give. When you only have 10 Hong Kong dollars in your pocket, give it away. And lo and behold, the next day you'll get 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. And this happened to me back in 1992. I gave my last $10 to a poor human being who couldn't walk, sitting on the Exchange Square bypass. I was rushing to Llama Island, I had no money, early days with Friends of the Earth. And I saw him, and he looked me in the eyes and looked him in the eyes, and I gave him $10, and I kept going, was rushing for the ferry. Then I realized that that was my last money on this planet. If you have less than 100 Hong Kong dollars in your ATM, you can't pull out money, even though that $50 was juicy. So I couldn't even withdraw $100 from my ATM. It's HSBC. Lo and behold, the next day, I'm not exaggerating, there was a check from Friends of the Earth in my letterbox for 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. Wonderful. The biggest teaching on the planet. Thank you, God. Wonderful. Thank you. Being in the food world in Hong Kong, this is alarming, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's one of the world's records. Is 40% of all the waste in Hong Kong is food. That is kitchen cuttings, leftovers, etc. And now, you know, this is being quoted often now. That's the equivalent of 120 double-decker buses going to the landfill every day, full of food. Now, this is not necessarily edible food from the buffets. Some of it is. But it's when you're in the kitchen and you're cutting your carrots and your vegetables, the scraps. These are resources. These should be collected as compost. It is said by the Food Environment Hygiene Department that there's 11,000 restaurants in Hong Kong. I think it's closer to 15 now. Now, a small example, Mana Fast Slow Food in Central, which is the first Mana we opened. Every month, we generate 1,500 kilos of food scraps from one small restaurant. And anybody who's been to Mana Fast Slow Food in Wellington? Wonderful. So if a small restaurant like Mana, that's vegan, by the way, we're 95% vegan, is generating this amount of food waste scraps, multiply that by 11,000 restaurants in Hong Kong, and you get close to 1 million kgs of waste that should be converted into a resource. This is good for the soil. This generates good Hong Kong soil. We know that Hong Kong people like to eat out a lot. And as a result, we are literally eating our planet. Literally, I mean, we use this word so loosely now. Literally this, literally that. As bad as saying, I love this, I love that. You know? Oh, I love that. I love that movie. I love, you know, we love so much. But we are eating our planet, ladies and gentlemen. And it's not to do with the overpopulation of humans. Mother Earth can accommodate 20 billion brothers and sisters easily. It's the way in which we run our economies, the way in which we run the production of food, the way in which we run our education systems. Therein lies the problem. It's not the sheer number of population. All of humanity could fit into a state the size of Texas, no problem. It's how we farm. As David was saying, eating meat was a luxury. We used to do it on weekends. We'd have a turkey roast or a chicken roast, hot pot. It was a luxury. The family got together, we enjoyed it. Now, if you don't eat meat, fish or dairy 3 times a day, you're like, wow, I'm not full. How am I going to get my protein? How am I getting my calcium? You notice these 2 words, protein and calcium? This is pop knowledge, which is very dangerous. Protein and calcium, but you also need zinc and minerals and vitamins and enzymes, etc. And it's a myth that good protein comes from animal-based diets. It's a very low quality of protein that's coming from an animal-based diet. If you get your protein from a plant-based diet, much higher quality. Calcium from milk, that's a myth. Calcium does not, you don't get good quality of calcium in milk. So these are myths that are propagated by industry for business sake, etc., etc. I won't go there in this talk. The knife and the fork are the most powerful tools in the hands of humanity today. Stop and think about that. Maybe 10 years ago somebody could have said the nuclear bomb is the most powerful tool in the hands of humanity today. Or somebody could have said the Kalashnikov, right? Or somebody could say the GDP, or the economy. No. Is this quote clear to everyone? Why the knife and the fork? Because this is a symbol of food, of eating. So it is our daily choice of food that is the most powerful tool in the hands of humanity today. If everyone became vegetarian tomorrow, or vegan, we would see a sea change. We would see a shift in consciousness. Everything would change. Not just our health and our cholesterol levels and everything. How we think, how we sit, how we breathe, how we talk, how we feel, how we engage with our children. How many more minutes?
A little lower.
Okay. Next one, please. So, let me end here. I can talk for days on end. I love doing this. I love sharing knowledge and wisdom. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we really, really, honestly, truly have to eat like it matters. Not just for our sake, not just for our children's sake, not just for humanity's sake, but for the sake of the entire Mother Earth created nature, for the sake of our planet. We really, really have to eat like it matters. Thank you.